my name is Ebony Perro. I am acting as the chair of this panel from Margin to Center, Our Lives Matter Too. I am an English instructor and PhD student at Clark Atlanta, and I am excited to be the chair for my sisters in scholarship who have tackled and thoroughly addressed issues of privileging Black women's voices. And as I was listening, I was wondering if I was going to be able to find common threads, but even in the types of language that you ladies use, I see that we can all learn from each other. Ms. Davis, you talked about inclusion and including voices and privileging voices outside of the ivory tower, and I feel like each of you ladies took that step to privilege the lesser known voices and acknowledge underrepresented voices. Additionally, I believe that, Ms. Hill, you talked about sacrificial motherhood, yes? I thought of your paper, Ms. Kanu, about how do Black women leaders sacrifice and what do they sacrifice, particularly how do they deprioritize the self, to again use your words, Ms. Davis, how it relates to the early leaders such as Harriet Tubman, such as all the Sonia Sanchez's, Angela Davis's. How did they deprioritize self to capitulate their counterparts into the imagination of leadership? Other words that really rang out to me was this reclaiming. Each of you are talking about reclaiming the self. You're also talking about filling in the gaps. Ms. Carter, you talked about legal perspectives. I feel like these legal perspectives can be utilized in all fields, and that we all can examine intersectionality and interdisciplinary ways of engaging this to research our studies in race. And I would like to open up the floor to the audience to engage these lovely young ladies and ask questions.
In your study and in preparing your paper where you were looking at Black women being marginalized in very specific areas, did at any point you think of where the voice of the Black woman is shut out within the race itself, and that we are marginalized within our own race, and how this affects, especially when I was looking at the one on sacrificial motherhood, and so if you could just sort of speak to that. At what point did you, I know you had to narrow it down to what your topic was, but just how much did that play into what you were writing on, how we are marginalized as Black women in the Black race?
I talk about Andrea Cooper and how she refers to Black women and their voices as a muteless note within our race, and that Black women's voices are necessary for the progression of the Black race. And I'm also doing an internship / community service thing at the Center for Black Women's Wellness. So I'm aware that Black women's voices are mute and not there.
My question is for Ms. Carter. You spoke about the police constitution. That was your recommendation or takeaway from. What would that look like, and is there a model in a different country that has something similar? Or where did that come about?
First frame of reference, I thought it was the United States Constitution, but I did realize as I was reading, and like she said, I had to condense my paper down too. I didn't have time. I didn't want to overwhelm anybody. But I noticed, like I said, the real reason there is no accountability for the police brutality, there are no laws against it.
There are no what?
There are no laws that will enforce police brutality. You have the Fraternal Order of Police that will protect the police at any cost. Like right now in Baltimore, I know this isn't about women, but with the Freddie Gray situation, they were eager to remove Marilyn J. Mosby off the case because she immediately did her job. No, she didn't interfere, play the boys' game. She did her job, did a separate investigation. And I noticed that the Fraternal Order of Police was eager to have the arrogance and the audacity to challenge the state attorney for a case such as this. But to get back to your question, I do believe that there needs to be a frame of reference. There needs to be laws set into place to resolve this issue, and it's not going to happen overnight because we cannot change hearts. I feel as though the police institution, and not all white Americans, but many have their own support for the police institution, but the discord between African Americans and the police is evident. It's not a conspiracy theory, it is a reality, and it needs to be enforced immediately.
I think that we need to have more black women in law enforcement and more black attorneys and more like such as Marilyn Mosby. I was so amazed, as were a lot of other people, because in the situation of Freddie Gray, she didn't wait. She really set the stage of something is wrong and I need to take this stance as a black woman and I need to shut it down and I really need to investigate and do all of the different things that she did. So I think, and you know, in my paper when I talk about leadership development, exposing a lot of young black girls to, you know, having internships where they're going and working with lawyers or they're going and they're working with law enforcement. So that way they can see themselves in that space, because with situations where black women are marginalized, a lot of the time we don't have women or people who are advocating for us. So situations such as what happened with Sandra Bland can happen more frequently because we don't have people who are necessarily looking out for our best interests.
But like she just mentioned, women that are actually in law enforcement, did you ever mention their experience? Because working in a system that is broken,
Yes.
and just because you're in the system doesn't mean that you're automatically making it better if you're working in a broken system.
Yes.
So what are all of your thoughts on that?
I was intrigued and inspired by this topic. My dad is a retired juvenile officer, but 3 of my cousins are attorneys, so I kind of understand the contradictions that goes on in the system a little bit. But for the black women that work in these systems, they often have to fight the politics of their job. There's the loyalty of the blue line and the loyalty of my race, and unfortunately, from what I did find, many black people fall into the trap of, I don't want to get fired, I need to stay loyal to the police department. So I might turn a blind eye to this situation. That was excessive, but I'm not going to say anything about it because I want to keep this job and I want to move up. It's not everybody, but it's a large number where they're forced with the loyalty of the blue line, because when you become a police officer, it's almost like a fraternity and you want to climb up the ladder in that organization. So that has been the issue, right, with a broken system. First and foremost, we need to not just have black people in law enforcement or government, we need to have conscious black people in law enforcement and government. Like Eric Holder, I like Loretta Lynch and I'm impressed with what she's doing, but the one thing I loved about Eric Holder so much when he came in as Attorney General, there was no question, no debate. He stated his allegiance and he did his job immediately. He was very conscious of what was going on in Ferguson and other cities. And I think to help resolve this issue, we need people such as Loretta Lynch, Marilyn J. Mosby, and in the past, the great Barbara Jordan. We need more women like that in this field.
As a black woman working in law enforcement in a broken system, you almost become participatory in your own oppression because you're still working in a system that has told you time and time again you have no power in. And then you're contributing to the oppression of your people by upholding those values. So you can't help black women move from margin to center. You're still pushing black women to margin.
I think to piggyback on both of their responses, there's so many different systems that need fixing, so not even necessarily just everything's broken. Not just within law enforcement, but when you look at our education, there's just so many different systems. So acknowledging that there needs to be fixing, so not just pretending that we're living in a world where everything is okay. And I think creating networks among other black women or among other allies of people who want to help make a situation better, because that's when you have collective support. Black people were used to operating collectively. And when we were in Africa, we didn't have an individualistic culture, so we were always working together for the greater good. So I think really being able to come together to tackle issues, as opposed, when I was in undergrad, I was involved in a lot of leadership roles, and I could never just get something done by myself. I had to have a network of other black women or other people to help fix different issues. Thank you for that question.
Historically, black women, ironically, have been in support of our race as a whole, especially our black men. How do you guys feel about the lack, when it looks from the outside looking in, the lack of support that it seems like we get from our black men when it comes to black women issues and black feminism?
Anna Julia Cooper for decades have been telling us, or telling W.E.B. Du Bois, you're not listening, women are necessary, their voices are necessary for the progression of the race. And here we are in 2015, and we're still having the same issues. The whole, with Black Lives Matter, it seems when the campaign initially came out, no, it still focuses on predominantly Black men. Most of the names of the women that Brittany mentioned in her paper, a lot of people don't even know those names, and that's a problem. And then we have women, I'm in love with Anna Julia Cooper at this point in my studies, but we have women like Anna Julia Cooper being compared to W.E.B. Du Bois when she came first. Like, she had no equal. This is not her equal. So it's bothersome. It's almost, it makes you angry almost. And sometimes you're just like, we need to start prioritizing Black women, but then when we do that, we're still at this place where we don't progress because we're not working as a collective.
To answer your question, I believe it is unfortunate and it's truly frustrating, but I think the gist of it boils down to self-loathing. Black men still have a deep hatred for themselves. They still have a deep hatred for themselves. When people violate and attack us, not everybody, but for the most part, brothers are not jumping on the bandwagon to speak up. I'll give you a prime example, and a pop culture reference really fast. When Kanye West made his little remarks about Taylor Swift, white men in white America immediately rallied around her. There was all kind of racist rhetoric on social media, but they were like, we need to protect her, we need to uplift her, we need to uphold her. We don't get the same type of love, we don't get the same type of respect. But that boils down to you hate yourself. They have adopted the values of white men who, Thomas Jefferson, one of our founding fathers, stated that we do not represent the ideals of womanhood, purity, chastity, all of those things, and Black men have internalized that from the days of slavery. So I believe that's what's going on right now.
I think it's going to get to a point where Black men, they see that, where Black women are going to be so fed up with our brothers not looking out for us on our different issues, where we're just going to stop caring, we're going to stop supporting, and when it gets to that moment, then they're going to realize, because I don't think that women of other races will truly, the way in which Black women hold Black men down will have the ability to keep that going.
You talked about Black Girls Rock and Girl Scouts and those type of leadership building, organizations. I was a Girl Scout all the way from kindergarten to senior year, so I understand. And then it influenced me. I attended Spelman, and then I'm now doing my PhD work in gender and development and African studies at Howard. So I understand. I really believe in the empowerment and the leadership capabilities of our young girls. But I wanted your thoughts because when Michelle Obama spoke this year at Black Girls Rock, the backlash that she got from white women, and so they did the parallel hashtag White Girls Rock, and they were actually upset with our First Lady. So kind of like your thoughts on that, and then the challenge that Black women in leadership, they have when it comes to, I guess, giving a helping hand to other Blacks in the workplace. So the microcosm of that would be in the workplace, how when Blacks are in leadership, particularly women, how they kind of, I don't know how to articulate it, but there's kind of this tension there when it comes to uplifting another Black that, giving them a promotion or sharing their networks with them, because there's what I call the slave mentality. We don't want to see the master. We don't want the master to see us helping another, so kind of that conversation.
I remember watching Black Girls Rock, and I think all of us, I don't think we watched it together, but we were all having conversations with one another, and it was so exciting to see First Lady Michelle Obama to be there because that said something. And I knew that there probably would be a backlash because everybody wants, for her to be bipartisan and for her not to have an opinion. But at the end of the day, Michelle Obama, she is a Black woman and there's no escaping that. So why is it okay for her to support other initiatives, but she can't come and be a part of that fellowship with her sister girls? Because that probably did something to her spirit. And then to go and start an ignorant hashtag such as, White Girls Rock clearly we already know to some degree y'all think that you do, and that's why there's a need for us to have a separate hashtag of Black Girls Rock. So I think that when those situations happen, we as Black women still need to keep pushing forward and not even paying attention and utilizing those hashtags, because I'm pretty sure for the most part everyone uses social media. The more attention you give to something, so if me as a Black woman, I'm sitting here using the, well, I'm so mad that white girls rock, and putting that hashtag that's still going out into the ether, we don't need to feed into them being upset, because eventually people got over it. And to speak into your next point about Black women in the workplace, when I was younger, I had an internship and I worked in the government for a couple of years, and I saw the different sides of having Black women really, really support you and having Black women being upset that you were there. And mind you, I'm an intern, I'm not making that much money, and during that time, and so there was a Black woman, she adopted me as her daughter, and because she wanted to make sure that I was molded and that I was doing the right thing. And she had told me, she's like, you know, not everyone, just because we're all Black and we're all women, not everyone has your back. Because she was saying there's this one day she went to go grab coffee, and I happened to be walking, and this other Black woman who was very high rank was like, look at her, who does she think that she is? And my mom was like, whoa, like this girl, she's an intern, like why are you so upset? And so that's why I'm very passionate about how it's important for Black women to have, or as you're growing and as you're matriculating, to have mentors, to have people who are teaching you these different things. And we need to get to the place where it's a majority of Black women who are exciting that you see someone younger who, because had that person been in that situation when they were a lot younger, they probably would have advanced a lot further in their career if they would have had someone helping them. And I think that it's sad that in 2015 there's not that much support. I had a girlfriend who she recently, she lost her job because her boss was a Black woman, and she just did not like her and did whatever she could to make sure that she lost her job. And it's really sad, but we still need to keep pushing forward and not letting the actions of other people keep us discouraged.
But where do you think that tension, what is the source of that tension that happened?
Not wanting someone else to, I guess it goes back to crabs in a barrel. Some people still operate, you talked about the slave mentality, some people still operate with the crabs in a barrel mentality. So if Chyna is advancing, that automatically means that, that I can advance. But I wish Dr. Black was still here. But one of the things that he said is this whole crabs in a barrel mentality, even with Black people, that doesn't make sense, because crabs, their natural habitat is not in a barrel. So we shouldn't be looking at it that only one person can get to the top. Multiple people have the ability to be able to get to the top. And if Chyna's succeeding, then I'm succeeding.
First, I would like to say to you, I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
And seeing you there, I'm just so proud of you. When I saw this in the book, the young women, I was in the military, and I retired as a commander in the Navy. And trying to do that was major, because you don't get the support of your peers or the other Black women. And is that there seems to be a fear that only one person can succeed, and if I help this other person, then I might lose my place. And I'm not sure where that comes from, but the desire, my desire, and the desire of my friends is that the intergenerational blessing starts to really flow between the old and the young. And that we do take you on the wing and we mentor you. And I know that I can't save all, but those that I come and interface with, then I can take them on the wing. And there's so much to living that's not written in a book for Black women. And there's so many things that happen to us that's not written down, there's no written guidance on. So we have to share this in conversations and forums like these, and that intergenerational blessing. So those lessons that your grandmother had, they didn't have the opportunities that you have, but they had life, and they lived, and they survived. And so you have to take those things and apply them parallel alongside what you have now and what's here for you. I'm so proud of you. I'm just bursting with pride sitting here. If someone asked, they would probably think, those are all my daughters. Fine. Because that's how I feel. But we have to do that. And we have to keep fighting it. And it is 2015. And it's 2015, but why is it that in my church, I'm just trying to fight to get a woman's name put on a classroom? They built a new building and they named all the classrooms after males in the Bible. There are females in the Bible who have done things, and why is this a fight in 2015? Why can't we just have a female's name listed on the classroom so when a little black girl walks in and looks up, she can see a female's name and know that a woman has power? So when I asked that original question about our voices being muted within our own race, one of the strongest institutions in our race is the Black church. We need a lot of work there, ladies. We need a lot of work there because that will be the undergirding of a lot of changes that will take place. It's 2015 and it should not be a novelty that there's a female minister in this church, that there's a female bishop. I mean, and that some still are excluding and saying women can't enter the pulpit, where you got an area that's supposed to be, this is where the leaders of our race have generally come from. So in that gripping of power, I just want to say to you to keep your voices heard, to speak, and don't be afraid to voice your opinions. And sometimes you will stand alone, but as long as you know that you are right, you do that. You stand and you keep doing what you're doing and you will go far in life. And I'm going to be looking for every last name. I'm a pet rat. I keep everything, and I will be looking for you as you move up in this life. I salute you.
Thank you. What is your name, ma'am?
Deborah Luckett Day.
A couple of years ago, I read Alice Walker's Search on Mother's Garden, and when I finished it, I don't know that I found that garden, but then I came to Atlanta, and I was like, oh, it wasn't so much about finding the garden, it was about what our mothers planted there. And what I'm finding is, like, it was those sister networks. Had I had this early on, elementary school, and knew what those were, everything was such a competition. And I came here and it's like, another black woman is not my competition. The plan has to be that we both make it. So Atlanta, Clark Atlanta has been such a beautiful experience.
I do sort of question sometimes the reasoning, I guess, towards the reason why black men don't necessarily support black women. And I think that when we look at sort of patriarchy and we look at colonization, we can say that we are, as black people in America, we are somewhat colonized. And I think that we must look at it as a result of colonization, this attempt to engage in patriarchy, or the attempt to sort of imitate white male patriarchy that on behalf of black men has caused them to silence or to muzzle black women's voices. And I think that to gain sort of that understanding and not necessarily just say black men don't do this for black women, don't do that for black women. We also have to contextualize within colonization that has us imitating white men. But do we not all sort of imitate whiteness in some way in a colonized society? Right. And so I think that, yes, we do have to stick together. And if black women sort of go ahead and say, F off the black men, we would all be doomed. Right? And so I think that that unity does have to sort of continue to grow. Black men do have to stand up for black women, but I think an understanding of colonization is necessary for us to succeed in general.
I feel like when we do use our voices and make an attempt, we're called bitter black women. And then you can't date us, you can't meet your mom, you only date white girls. So those are things that I've heard in the past whenever we vocalize opinion or called you out on your patriarchy. How do we move forward from that? Or how do we address that?
How do we address colonization and the psychological effects of colonization, right? I think it's the same question. How do you address it without sort of being a victim of it, right? And I think that both are going to happen, right? That we're going to continue to be victims of oppression, victims of colonization, victims of white supremacy, and the attempt to imitate white supremacy for some black Americans or some black people, while at the same time fighting against all of that in the process. I think that, some black people are going to be said they're not black enough. Right? Well, of course they're going to continue to be called that in the system of colonization, right? And black people that are trying to sort of justify their anger towards themselves, right? Should those people that are not black enough stop fighting, stop saying stuff, stop speaking up? Absolutely not. Right? It's sort of a process of living and fighting at the same time. Am I saying that it's right that women have to deal with that? Absolutely not. Right? But that is all a part of I think, the process of fighting against colonization.
So how do we address people that don't have that consciousness and aren't willing to adapt that consciousness?
I really think that we not only have to do it for black men, but I think we have to do it overall for our society. I think that when we talk about black women raising as single mothers, other males, they a lot of times perpetuate patriarchy to black males. So I don't think that we should ignore the fact that it is patriarchy in black communities is being perpetuated by black women as well as black men, right? I think that black men benefit from it, where black women do not necessarily, right? But we understand that these sort of notions and these sort of aspects of colonization are very much being perpetuated by a lot of black people in general, not just black males. And so I think we need to attack it as a whole, for sure.
That you said black mothers perpetuate patriarchy to black males, as if they're solely responsible for that.
No, but I'm not saying that black men don't. I'm just saying we have to acknowledge that, yes, it is black men who sort of engage in patriarchy, but understand that it's not as if that patriarchy only exists for black males, right? That there are black women that perpetuate patriarchy too. And I think it's important to understand that it is a systemic issue. It's not necessarily like just black men engage in patriarchy. No, that's not the case. The reality is that it is a systemic issue that affects everyone, that is perpetuated by everyone, or a lot of people, right? Not just one group.
I think when it comes to black men supporting black women in their issues, first it's all about education and having a conversation and acknowledging and sympathizing with the other. We don't talk is the issue, and we don't communicate. And one part of that, I feel like if we have our older black men educating our younger black men on history and on their culture, that could be one possible step. It was just very interesting, y'all's dialogue, just hearing just the different things that you were saying about, basically putting all the responsibility as far as raising the family on the black woman, the angry black woman, all of those stereotypes, the mammy, the welfare queen, all of those different stereotypes. And the thing is that those have been placed upon us, and it's not really reality. And if we can fully understand where all of that comes from, and we get our black men to fully understand the complexity of a black woman, then I feel like that's the first step. Have them take, like at my university, we have 8 courses that focus strictly on feminism, black feminism in America, and all my classes there's no men. And to me that's a problem. And my thing is, when does the university step into play? I'm a history major, and a lot of our history male students never take those courses because they're not required. But everything else in our department is required, but the black studies courses, black women study courses. And I feel like if we can start from there, it has to be a group effort in our race, and we just continue to have to support each other and educate each other and have a conversation with each other.
Black people, when you think about it, we endured the trauma of slavery with no therapy, no source of mental help. We just tried to branch out into American society, the Reconstruction era. After that, bam, Jim Crow hits again. Like, it was stampede, domino effect, more violence, more isolation, more ridicule, things of that nature. And then you have black men and black women. Truth be told, these are 2 damaged people who produce damaged generations of children. These people are hurting. Like you said, we don't talk. I just found out, and I hope there's some books about it. Did you know during slavery, really, because they were moving us around so much, some of us probably had sex with a relative and didn't know? Issues of incest. There could have been so many things. There's so many things that are plaguing us from that experience. We haven't addressed that, and we have not even received the therapy from that situation. On a daily basis, black men endure trauma, black women endure trauma. Some men, they go off to prison, they get raped. They don't want to come home and tell us about that. She gets raped in prison. She doesn't want to come home and tell anybody about that. I was just thinking, there are so many, I think, first and foremost, we have to examine our psychological damage. It's there. There's no therapy. there's no consideration, like I mentioned in my paper, why is it that the police are being aggressive with people who have mental health issues? Okay, if a woman is vomiting, maybe you should accommodate her in another way, do not lock her up. So, I don't know, it just came to me, I'm glad you brought that up.
Brittany, when you're speaking, it reminded me of a text that would be a really good reference for each of you, and also for you. It's Joy DeGray, The Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. Final points, ladies.
No, thank you all so much for coming, and I hope you all were able to learn something.
Yes, thank you all for coming to this panel. Ladies, thank you for an engaging discussion. Audience, thank you for your questions and comments. I feel like this was a really fruitful discussion that needs to be continued, not only in academia, outside of these doors as well. Thank you for coming. Thank you.